Hey, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock and we had an appointment at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here. It's lovely to see you all. Or I should say it's lovely to see the 12 of you who actually have your cameras on. Come on, everybody. Thank you, Matt and Danielle. Come on, I'm going to keep guilting you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Stuart. Oh, look at that. How lovely. Here's the thing, guys. When you look as good as we do, there is no reason not to on the camera. That's my thought. Right? Exactly. See that? Jen Barbosa's doing somersaults in her car. I'm not sure how she's doing that and maintaining control of the car, but she is a talented, talented woman. Everyone, quick, be distracted by Jen in the car. Look how red Jen's getting in the car. All righty. So I'm really excited about this conversation because I don't know about the rest of you, but I kind of went into Family Reunion really focused on listening for ideas and opportunities to help us solve this this challenge, right? What do we call them nowadays? They're not problems, they're solution opportunities, right? So this is our listing solution opportunity discussion. I had a couple of conversations with some of you one-on-one in the last week or two around certain paths forward. And I'd like to bring some of those to the table today. I'd like to hear what you guys are doing individually to make sure that that we can all kind of plug and play into some of those ideas, and then just kind of brainstorm about what we need to be doing to climb on top of listing inventory, right? Is there anybody on the call who disagrees that we have a massive shortage of listing inventory? Okay, good. Then you're in the right place. Phew, because I was not prepared for discussion around you not agreeing with that. We'd have to go back to monitoring and the basics. But the simple reality is there are some solutions. Some of these solutions, let's just kind of set some boundaries for our conversation. Not every solution that we put on the table is going to work or be appealing for every single one of your potential sellers, right? So let's not get distracted by, oh well, you know, Tom and Maria Smith are the people I'm trying to solve this issue for, and none of those things will work for them. Right? That might be true. It also might not be true. So here's the other thing I want to set the stage with. Really come into this conversation with an open mind, right? Because some of the ideas that were going on in the last couple of days at Family Reunion, holy Christmas, were any of you watching the chat box when one of these mega agents would say, well, here's what I've been doing for the past 6 months and it's really worked. And the chat would go crazy. Oh, you can't do that. That's against the law. The realtor police can lock you up forever. Oh my goodness. Like, take a breath and take a step back. We're talking about solving sellers' issues. We're not talking about breaking the law. And what's fascinating to me is that a lot of times when people get all wrapped up over you can't do it that way, they don't even have all the information. They're not correct in what they're saying. So I'm not saying that's any of you. What I'm saying is let's just approach this with an open mind. And if there's a question about doing something, let's, instead of having a conversation around, oh, I can't do that, let's ask a different question, right? Let's ask the question, how can we get that done? That's question du jour. How can we get sellers to say yes to listing their property? Right now, they're reluctant, right? And they're reluctant basically for one reason, right? Because concerned that if they sell their property too quickly, which is likely, that they won't have a place to go, right? That's the kind of the issue that we're dealing with today. Would you agree? Okay, good. Goodness, I just keep having people come to the meeting room. This is clearly a hot topic. Here's how we'll run today. In fact, you have thoughts around solving this issue, something that you're doing, or something that, an idea that you heard at family reunion that someone else is doing, or a thought that's kind of been just knocking around your head, to put on the table and let the rest of us kind of hear and then ruminate over, and we can kind of pick it up, say, well, how about we did it this way? What if we turned that idea into this, right? That's how brainstorming works the best, right? So don't feel like to have this brilliant, completed idea. I can't tell you how many times I come to your leadership. Your team leaders will tell you all the time. I come to our leadership meetings and say things like, okay, woke up this morning, I got on the treadmill, and halfway through my run, I had this idea. I think we should figure out how to do it without any more parameters than that. So raw ideas are okay, because then other people say, oh, that is an interesting raw idea. Let me put some legs on it over here. What if we did it that way? So from the perspective of the fact that we have 71 of us, this 72 if you count Matt and Danielle, because they're in the same Brady Bunch box, right? You guys are like the Ann B. Davis of my Brady Bunch box, the way you're positioned. So there you have it. That makes you Sam the Butcher. Come on, there's got to be more Brady Bunch fans than just me. Like, there's some people. Gio, you old. Can I send a heater to your house? Or maybe calisthenics while we're talking. That'll keep you warm. All right, so here's how we'll work, this being such a large group. If you have a thought or an idea that you want to put on the table, or a strategy or a question, do one of two things. Either a little blue digital hand, right? For those of you who know how to raise the blue digital hand on Zoom, or just unmute. Do wait for me to call you, because I get to see who's unmuted, and then we can kind of run through that. So start us off. It looks like Kathy, everybody to the punch. Kathy, what do you have for us?
Well, this week and last week, I've been going through my CRM, and I have called people that I, maybe even spoke to since 2018 when I initially spoke to them, and they mentioned to me that they were thinking about selling in a few years. So what I'm doing is I'm calling them and I'm giving them the market stats particular to their particular town, letting them know that, the median prices are up, whatever it is, 20% versus prior year. It's a seller's market. We're getting multiple offers on properties, and, sellers are getting asking price or more. So if you're thinking about selling, now is the time to do it. We don't know what the market is going to be like next year, but we know what it is today. If I do get the objection of the problem is we don't know where to go, I don't handle that objection on the phone with them at that point. We make an appointment and discuss it at the table, and I articulate what their options are. But the purpose of the phone call really is to get them excited about the market and promote the urgency of the market right now with the increase in median price, and that buyers are just waiting for new listings to come on. We don't have enough homes on the market for the buyers. So that I've gotten today I got an appointment. I got an appointment last week. So for me, that's working. I'm going back not only to old expireds, I'm going back to people that I've spoken to since 2018. And today's appointment was from somebody from 2018.
Love it. And so what I'm hearing Kathy say, just before we move on from that, is, first of all, she's taking a 3-year look back window and having conversations. But the most important thing Kathy just said was the purpose of my phone and get appointment. Right? If the objection that we're looking to solve of, I'm not sure where I would go if I get my house on the market, that's exactly the same objection as, what do you charge for commission? How much do you think is my, what will you do differently than the last person who I just expired with, right? Those are all the same objection when you're on the telephone with someone. The idea is move forward to statement, right? Because I guarantee you that each far powerful and persuasive in person or minimally via Zoom, depending on how you're doing your appointments, than you are just trying to be attractive on the telephone. So I love the cat table here is to say, look, get appointments. We have to solve that issue. We still have to handle that objection, which we're going to. However, the first step is let's find appointment opportunities, because if someone, let's face it, not everyone will have that objection. And that's it. There was an and, and I can't remember what it was. And brilliant that I can't remember. So just jot that down. Oh, I know what it was. Not everyone will have that objection. So it's kind of like not pushing your buyers to go whole hog on a house because they might have an appraisal issue down the road, right? Well, guess what? If they're not the winner of the offer, it doesn't matter if it appraises or not, right? So don't solve issues that haven't come up yet. Get appointments, and then ask what's driving the conversation. Maybe they're relocating down to Florida where the inventory is better. Maybe I heard a bunch of agents across the country yesterday say, yeah, that whole inventory thing, that's not happening here. Like, we have houses to sell. So be careful about the judgments that you make. Get in front of someone and then ask a bunch of questions, sure that you have a full understanding of what it is you need.
Hey, Rick, I just want to add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
And that is, if I don't get an appointment, I always ask, do you know of anyone that is thinking about selling their home that would want to take advantage of this market that we're in? You have to ask that. If you don't get that appointment with them, ask if they know of anyone else. And I always say, it doesn't necessarily need to be on your street, in your neighborhood. Our whole area is short of inventories, or anyone that you know of that's thinking about selling that I could give a call to.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Right. So it's contact database, and then using your database. If it's not for them, boom. Right. Right. Love it. Jody, what do you have for us?
Okay, so I'm actually going to expand on Kathy. I'm actually going back through all my books, just starting with last year, this past year, not only 2020, 2019, 2018. I'm going to keep on going because there are people who we spoke to years ago and never sold. And for some reason, at whatever point in time, they were thinking about it. And I'm also going to go back and say, not only was it because they weren't motivated at the time, but lots of times for so many years, we've been telling the sellers, it's not a great market. And they might have really been disappointed. They might have decided not to put it on because they were really disappointed in the number. So now I'm making phone calls to say, hey, when we spoke a couple of years ago, and, I remember that, I've always remembered that look on your face when I gave you that disappointing number because of where the market was. And I'm just calling you with just great information. If you want to just get out of your house, now is the time. And, I usually talk about how, when we talked about it being such a hard, until last year, we talked about it being such a hard market to sell in, especially the higher you are in price. So certainly in our area, when you got to the 700,000, 800,000, 900,000, and certainly over $1 million mark, it was so difficult to sell their houses. And now, Mr. Seller, anything goes, everything is moving. There is no inventory. So, and I also sort of throw in the motivation that, right now we are so short of inventory, not only because there's a shortage of inventory, but because there's such a high demand with everybody coming out of the city and apartments. I'm just sort of wondering, when we all get vaccinated and we get back to some sense of normalcy, are we going to go back to where we were? And I then have to have the conversation that was the same conversation we had a couple of years ago. Are we going to go back into that conversation again? So right now, until now, we felt so badly for sellers, and somebody said, oh, I feel so badly for the buyers. But I have to tell you, frankly, it's been so difficult for sellers for so long. Mr. Seller, now's your time. Now it's time. Do you want to sell?
Yeah, love that. I love that. At some point, remember that the natural extension of what we're talking about is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this may not necessarily be the most convenient time for you to be a seller. However, I'm curious, what's your number? Like, if you could put an extra $40,000 in your pocket right now, would it suddenly be a whole lot more convenient? Right? Numbers that, like, you can buy someone's love. $40,000 might be it in terms of buying that seller's. But my point is, sure, you pivot it to a business conversation around the fact your property right now is probably worth more, has been in the last decade, and it might be in the next decade. 10 years looking forward, this may be your moment. Have you thought about it? You may be able to help people make faster decisions who say, you know what, I was going to wait till next year to move down to Florida. I think maybe now is the time. Sky, what do you have for us?
So I feel mildly like an ambulance chaser, but I am hitting the people on social media who are complaining about the weather. I hate the weather here. I can't stand it anymore. Where would you go? Really? Did you know that now is the best time to be on the market, sell your home, and go wherever you want to go? And so I'm doing that both in my niche, which is the horse world, because those people definitely complain February to March. They just hate this time of year. But I'm seeing it all over. People who, because of COVID, haven't been able to golf this winter because they couldn't get to where they golf and they're unhappy. Well, what would it take to get you to move to Arizona? And what does that look like for you? And so I'm having that conversation with people to get them out of our state, to loosen up their real estate, and then I don't have to worry about them as buyers. And that way we're having this conversation about, well, I can even refer you. Where do you want to go? I've got a great agent who can take you out there.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love the idea for two reasons. A, I love the let's focus in on the complainers about the weather, because they clearly are in a mindset of, you know what, maybe something different is appealing right now. So I love that focus. But the other thing that's reminded us of is everybody who's a seller is also going to be a buyer locally, right? So what are we now targeting and finding opportunities for people to relocate someplace else that might have a better flow of inventory? Right. So that's just a mind. You have to reset your mind to make sure that you're not always thinking, well, these people buy, these people have to buy. Right. I don't know what the percentage of sellers in the last 6 to 12 months and that haven't stayed low. It's enough that we could find a piece of inventory this week. Right. I love that. Great idea. Dawn.
Hi, unmuted. Hi guys. So my last 4 appointments and my 2 listings actually came from me contacting landlords. A lot of landlords got into the rental business because they couldn't sell their house. They've been renting for a couple years. One was 9 years, and I'm listing that next week, but I had contacted them. I had put the renter in that place, but not all of them. Some of them I did not have anything to do with this transaction. I just, I went back, I saw that they rented 5 years ago and thought maybe that's the reason why they couldn't rent. Couldn't sell, so they rented. And a couple of them were my clients that, I said, you know what, you're done being a landlord. Let's just get it on the market. So it's been pretty good. So, to get the appointments, get in front of them, and they are not worried about where they're going because they already live somewhere else.
That's kind of genius, right? So I love that as well. Find who either you turned into by default landlords over the last couple of years, or who chose landlords a number of years ago on their own, who have their own house to be buyers, who just don't want to do it anymore, right? It's noting that in the last 10 months, some landlords haven't been getting paid rent. They haven't been getting excited about, the first of the month, because they know it's just going to be an event, right? With people who either can't pay or won't pay. And foreclosures are still off the table for many of them, right? So I love the idea of targeting those people. They are available to be inventory. I mean, so far we've heard a lot of really great ideas to find people whose inventory doesn't come with the objection that we started off this conversation with. So one of the cool ways to solve the objection is to find people who don't have it.
Yeah,
And then you don't have to.
I'm sorry, the other thing was that they were actually care calls because I was asking, is your tenant paying? Because so many are not paying.
I love that. I love that. To follow up on Dawn's idea, make sure that you have the information, that you know where eviction moratoriums stand. Make sure that you know. When I open the mic, Steve, you're next. Be on deck. I'll find a link and put it in the chat to a spot where that gives you just kind of an out what the rules are for evictions right now. So if you're pedaling down this path, know what the exceptions are. Know how to talk to your landlords to see whether or not they meet some of the exceptions. And when they don't, what's left is, well, maybe it's time to get rid of the house, right? Love it. Mr. Scaramacchia.
I had an experience yesterday where I'd say, look for a motivation beyond the number. You had said regularly, what's your number? So I met with past clients yesterday, and they were concerned. They want to move to Wilton. Their oldest daughter's starting high school next year, and they want to move to Wilton. But their concern was, where are we going to live? We're going to find a house. And so I just stayed focused on, you want your daughter in high school in Wilton next year. So we'll get a roof over your head somehow. You could live anywhere for a year. And so I just stayed focused on that. And, last night they called me and said, yeah, we're 99% there. Could just show us a couple of houses over the weekend. And then we think we're going to list.
Yeah. So I love that. Steve just put a really, really important conversation on the table for us. And it's the conversation of don't get so wrapped up into I can't see any of you. Where'd you go? My friends went away. Oh, there you are. Don't get so wrapped up into deciding that people will stay rooted in action, right? Because they may not. I love the fact that he said, well, I stayed focused on the fact that they wanted to move to Wilton. So let's just keep talking about moving to Wilton, move to Wilton. And the other gold nugget in that was, you can live anywhere for a year. We'll definitely find you a roof to put over your head. You won't be homeless. That's one of the things one of the scripts I used to use with my clients was, in my career, I have never had a client become homeless, right? We always manage to find you something. So it's not a matter of finding the perfect house. It's a matter of finding a house, a roof over your head in the short term to maximize being a seller now so that and maximize being a buyer later. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Can I add something to that?
Of course. Yeah.
So when I left them, I said to them, I'm going to send you some houses that are currently for sale for Wilton, and I'll send you some rentals for Wilton. So when I got back to do that, there were no suitable rentals in Wilton for them. So at first I was like, oh, great. This is going to be a problem. But what I went back and did was I pulled the rentals that closed from June to September of last year. And there were very suitable things in there. So I sent them those, and I'd say, this is a bad time of year, but there's a good chance these type of things should be available when you're looking.
Yeah, that's also kind of genius, right? Go and look at what may be expiring from a rental perspective, and then reach out to see if you can find your own rentals, right? There's short-term housing available. What if you looked at some of the properties? I know there aren't many of them, but there are some properties in the market that are simply not moving. They're just sitting there. Again, not many, and yet some. I'd make a call to those listing agents. Hey, I have a possibility. Would your folks consider renting because they're clearly not getting what they're looking for from a sale, right? And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and what I'm hearing so many of you say is, what? I wake up every morning and show up a little differently for my clients, because right now we have to wake up and show up as problem solvers, right? What's the issue you are trying to solve, Ms. Seller? Let's figure out all the moving parts to actually make it make sense for you, instead of deciding that this is not the right time for you to be a seller. I love that. Who was next? Elena was next.
Well, I have a question. It's not a strategy, but probably it can become a strategy. I want to ask if anybody knows of some kind of website that can show how much the house was got in appreciation within like a year or past 5 years, because that might be a conversation, like see how much equity you have now versus when you bought. And I want to know if there's any website that I could see that, not just take it from the air or from MLS.
Yeah, so I'll give you, Jody, do you have a thought on that?
So multiple places, so not house specific, but certainly market specific. You could pull stats through the MLS. I am also a broker metrics junkie. Get into broker metrics. They have it in the office, right? So you can see how much prices have gone up over the last couple of years, but in the MLS, you could pull it under stats.
Love it. Yeah, and Geos RPR, that's another system through the MLS that might be able to. But I think that's where I was going as well. Is I'm not sure there's anything house specific, but if you have a property in Newtown or a property in Norwalk, you can look back and see what comparable home we're selling for back then, or even just the median sale price 5 years ago when they bought, and see what the median sale price is and calculate the difference. So you've gone up X percent in the last 5 years. There may only be one wave that this goes next 5 years. Now is your moment, right? I think that's the theme, right, for sellers. Like, now is your moment. Again, it may not be convenient, but for any of you who have known me for more than 12 or 15 minutes, convenience isn't terribly high on my list. Sometimes it's just not, like, it's not in the cards. Like, I get it's not convenient, but nobody asked about your convenience, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, right? It's because it's accomplishing a goal. And sometimes the accomplishment of a goal is, it wasn't terribly convenient for me to get up and run my 5 miles this morning. I was very comfortable in my bed. I kind of looked like Geo in that hat. I was all cozy and warm, and the freaking alarm goes off. So it's not convenient. And yet doing those 5 miles this morning is a major part of a short-term and a long-term goal that I have. So it's not about convenience, right? And I think we have to help ourselves recognize that first, because some of you, be honest with yourselves, right? Look in the mirror. Some of you don't have these conversations as powerfully as you could, because it's not terribly convenient for the seller, or at least you're making that judgment call. You're assuming it's not convenient for them. Don't judge them. Let them come back to you and tell you. What else? Amy.
Hey, Rick, I sent you some things that I found yesterday that I'd love to talk about and maybe brainstorm on. And we all heard a lot from Sarah Reynolds, and she is a marketing machine. And when I went and studied her website and things that she's doing a lot of creative programs for sellers. Your price is our promise. If we don't sell it at the price that we suggested, we'll pay you the difference. She's doing a COVID relief where no commission to the sellers, the buyers pay the full commission. And I'm just really curious as to how she's able to pull those type of programs together and pull them off. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so the answer is some of it may be state specific in terms of some of that she's doing. I intended to actually find what you had sent so I could see it and run through it myself, and I just didn't have the opportunity to do that before we all got on together. But let's approach it from a slightly different angle. Where's Kim and Mike? Because Kim and Mike
Hi.
So Kim, do you want to talk? Oh, look, Mike went from one Brady Bunch square to the other Brady Bunch square.
How are you?
That was interesting. Okay, so Matt and Dan expect that you're going to be doing that now as well. All married couples have the opportunity to move from one square to the next in their so talk a little. We were talking about the other day feeds into what Amy's question was, and the conversation around how do we make these things happen? Because it's really about a conversation about off-market properties. At least it starts there.
Well, we did an interesting exercise the other day where we took like our 15 to 20 listings that we've been nurturing, and some of them have stalled, and we kind of want to figure out how do we motivate them. And so we did an exercise where we put all these listings on paper and what we thought they would sell for and in the town and everything. And what we started to notice was that, wait, we have buyers for these specific homes. So like, what if we played matchmaker? Like, what if we figured out another way? You know, some of the reasons these sellers don't want to list are all the ones we've mentioned, but also they're afraid of COVID. They don't want to be on the market. They don't want to have 1 million people in their home. So that's just yet another layer of this complication of they have no place to go. They don't want to sell fast, but they want to sell for the most, blah, blah, blah. So what we did was we started to have conversations with our hopeful listings to say, look, we actually have a specific buyer. And we don't like this strategy. We don't use it where, oh, we have the buyer for your home. But in this case, we actually do.
Well, free market.
So we actually started to personalize it. This couple, they have 2 young daughters. They really want to live in this neighborhood. We've been searching for 6 months. We sold their co-op in the summer. They've been living with their parents. And the more we talked about it, they started like, oh, wow, we could be helping a family and it could maybe be a private sale. And so it actually got us another appointment to kind of brainstorm. And that's when we brought Rick in as to like, how do you do this? Would they sign the off MLS form for the 30 days? That then would we just keep it a private sale and then open it up to our office and share it with our agents? So anyway, that's kind of where we're at.
It's like a softer way to get into the property. You just tell them I have somebody that's interested. Would you mind me just bringing that one person by? And you really have somebody that is a real match that is looking.
So it pushed us down this path of, because Amy, I think one of the things you sent me, how is she doing the, let me just bring it up here. Yeah, like coming soon, not on MLS. So it's sort of that same idea. Now in this particular scenario, one of the things, what Amy saw was, I don't know where this is, Fredericksburg. Is that down by you, Amy? Is that, well, I don't know where this is. So, but so the idea of having off MLS conversations, right? Off MLS conversations. And for some reason, my screen is now telling me that I'm unstable. So if you, it took the internet to finally figure it out. I don't think it's telling you any of you anything you know. So the idea of something off market can be different state by state, MLS by MLS, right? About what you can do and how you can do it. That's supposed to be the case. Remember, clear cooperation was a NAR rule that went into effect last May, or actually went into effect last January, that started to be enforced last May, that supposedly says any kind of public facing marketing or advertising is supposed to trigger a property going on the MLS within 24 hours. Cooperation says, right? And yet MLSs seem to have different rules around how that all works. Because if, for those of you who understand smart MLS works, if you market and your seller document that's, hey, guess what? I get all the benefits of being on the MLS. However, I choose to be off the MLS. One of them can do marketed publicly, which seems to go directly in the face of clear cooperation. So some of the answers that you guys are asking me, I don't have an answer because the rules seem to overlap and contradict one another. So what I say is this: live in the moment that we are in right now, and do the things that make sense for your buyers and your sellers. Don't purposely break the rules. And let me go on record that if anyone on this call is not a member of my 2 market centers, and so if I'm not your official broker of record, you need to verify this with your broker of record, right? For those of you who are, I'm verifying it ahead of time for you, right? And so what I would do is don't purposely break the rules. Make decisions that make sense for your clients. It's kind of the same place we came from with the whole filling out, the health thing. Designed that to be a help for the clients. And then everyone went into a whole tizzy about you can't have health forms. And if you remember, what I told you was, I believe that sellers have rights. And so this is a rights issue, not an MLS rules issue. So if your sellers choose their houses on the market and people to sign a form, go ahead and have them sign the form, and we'll deal with the fallout on the back end. I feel the same way about this conversation. If you have opportunities right now, follow the rules as best you can, which means fill out the listing agreement and have them sign the off MLS form, sign the agent consent or the agent backup form there saying, like, we're all following the rules as we know them, and then go and find the buyer or make the match and see what happens, right? My point is, one of the things that, Amy, that you sent me, I think the question was, how can she push this coming soon MLS? In the smart MLS, in that world, actually could do something like that, because there is nothing that in the paperwork that you sign with the smart MLS that says you cannot get to the public an off MLS property, as per the rules of our MLS. Now, interestingly, if you're listing something in Greenwich document that's supposed to be very similar is not very, it's really different and says you cannot publicly market. So follow the rules that we have, that we know about. That gives you an opportunity to buyers and sellers together, even off. Hopefully that answers at least some of the question. I know it doesn't answer the whole question. And again, the whole question may be different state, different MLS, different rules. I have to dive into some of those that Sarah's doing a little bit more. But here's the other side of this. And then, Jody, you're up, yes? Okay. So here's the other this. One of the things that I think it was Sarah Reynolds said yesterday that was kind of brilliant is take the mind shift right now, and this feeds into this conversation of how do you work with the whole paperwork thing. Use your buyers, right? Because most of us have more buyers in inventory than we have listings right now. So switch your mindset. Use your buyers as your inventory. Start looking at your buyers as the inventory you have. Start marketing your buyers. Run Facebook ads about Maria Smith. Don't name them perhaps, but about their qualifications, about what they're looking for. See if you can find sellers to contact you for Tom and Maria Smith. Go to market with a buyer instead of marketing a listing, which I think is a brilliant idea, right? One of the things that we're looking to do to promote, and I'll have more information for this for you on at 9 o'clock, is how can we, as 550 real estate agents, put the power of our collectiveness to work. Kim and Mike started looking around, wait, we may have a buyer for this. Well, imagine if we broadened that from just what their inventory is to the inventory that we all have in our pocket. What if Amy has a listing that if Mary Pat had the buyer for that listing and Linda had a house that she's not putting on the market yet that was perfect for Amy's sellers, well then bam, and Linda's sellers are moving out of Atlanta, then we have this little hat trick going on. But we don't know that yet because we don't have a repository for all of that information. So we are working to get you by Monday a repository for all that information so that we can work almost like a little mini MLS out of our world, so we'll know what you have and what you don't have, so we can start matchmaker. How we're going to make all that work from a paperwork perspective and remain compliant, I'm still trying to figure that out. However, that is less to me than serving the client. Less important to me than making sure that our sellers can find the buyer looking for and still find a house. We'll make it make sense on the back end, right? So what I would encourage you to do is follow the rules based on if you have a property that needs to be to somebody privately, fill out the off MLS document. Don't hide from that. Take the listing, fill out the document that they don't want to go on the MLS, know what that means, right? Because what that means in the smart MLS is that you also then can't put it on the market for 30 days. But as Kim and Mike and I were talking about, these are people who be on the market anyway. So who cares if it doesn't go on in 30 days, right? And that eventually, if they do go on, the clock starts ticking from the start of the listing agreement, not the day they go on the market. Don't be concerned about that either, because, hold on one second.
These wannabe listings was, but the house isn't ready. And we're like, but that doesn't matter because these are for buyers that are desperate and need a home. So she actually let us in with the house dirty, like not picked up, and like gave us the cards because we're like, look, let us just brainstorm this with you. So it's fascinating that we got in the door for a person that is a neat person and really wasn't ready for us. So just another thing is that the stress of preparing your home for market in the snow in COVID, it takes that away too. So just a side thought.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity here. I think we are stronger, like in anything, we are better able to serve this level together than we are separately, because we are we represent a far larger opportunity for both buyers and sellers with all of the things that all of us are talking to, rather than just it solo. Go ahead, Jody.
Well, first I have a question about what we're talking about, and then I have just like further discussion on other ideas. So specifically what we're just talking about, are you saying that the paperwork would be a regular listing agreement with just everything crossed out having to do with putting it on the MLS? Or is there another specific form that we could use when we're
so from a paperwork perspective, just use the regular ER form. And there's a separate withhold from MLS that lives on the MLS. There's a withhold from MLS form that's 2 pages that the seller has to sign, and then you sign and I sign. The seller says, I get that there's all these wonderful things on the MLS, but I choose not to. And then you and I have to sign it saying, like, we've told them that it's excellent to be on and they're choosing, and oh, by the way, we're following this.
Okay.
So yeah, you just use that as a follow-up. You said you had a thought about something else as well.
Oh, so you're ready to continue are you ready? So like other thoughts in terms of how to find the sellers. I've been going back to old expireds. Just, a house came off the market last year or in the last 6 months or sometimes the last month or two. And I call and I'm not even specifically pitching the listing. It's really part of Kim's matchmaking process. I now have a buyer in Greenwich who wants to buy a $2.5 million house. There's no inventory. I'm going back through all the Greenwich listings in that price range. And you know what? I'm not the first one doing that, because I'm finding that some of them say, oh my God, somebody just called me yesterday. They brought their client and we have an offer already. So just go back to the expireds. If you are looking for something specific, for someone specific, go back to the expireds.
Yeah, I love that. And put it in the I think that's who that was, that box. Yeah, and it's an excellent idea. One of the things that we heard yesterday from either Tim Heil or Bob Lucido or both, especially with aged expireds, take 15 to 30-day listing agreements. One of the things that can be appealing to that is, hey, you know what? You don't have to commit for a long period of time, right? Let's get you back on it, because I am so certain that we will find property, if it's positioned well, that we don't have to sign a 6-month agreement. Take a 15-day listing agreement. Just add language that the listing automatically extends through the date of the closing in a pending situation, right? The listing agreement from the board, from the MLS, does not say that. So you do have to add that in. But imagine going back to aged expireds and offering them a 15-day listing agreement to get your home sold for $1 or better. Especially aged expireds, because remember what they went through last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. they still may be traumatized by it. Oh, it was 6 months and it was horrible. And then it was a 3-month extension. And no one liked it. So just call them this. Hey, you know what? The market is such that I'm in the driver's seat. And I want to make this as simple as possible for you. Right? 15 days, list price or better, or you're done. Just decide not to be on the market. Who won't give you 2 weeks to make more money than they thought that their house was worth? I love that idea. So I do know that there are a couple of, we did hear a couple of solutions to the objection of, I don't want to put it on because I can't find some place to go, right? One of those solutions we were just talking about is using each other, using your own inventory, both buyer side and listing side, as potentials, right? Who do you have that could buy somebody else's house? Who do you wants to do like a house swap? We had 2 of those in the last 12 months, house swaps, right? And we got paid on it all. Somebody's one and that one bought that one. And we were the reason that they kind of found each other because they were in somebody's database and it just so happened to watch. So be careful that you're not missing opportunities with your own clients. But then leasebacks is another opportunity. And then I think I saw Tammy and I think I saw Paul on the call. I'd love for them to talk a little bit about financing opportunities. But let's stay on the leaseback just for a second. And before you roll your eyes and say nobody wants to do that, go back to started, right? We started this conversation by saying, what if somebody's number was, so you're saying I could get 600 for my 550 house in less than 2 weeks and then close 30 days later? You know what? I suddenly that is more appealing to me. So remember, everybody has an opportunity because everybody has a number. And what's going on in the chat here? Oh, see, yeah, and Eric, he did a leaseback himself. So the leaseback idea may sound unappealing to you. However, you're not the one doing it, right? So stop judging it. Let's bring it to the table to as a strategy. As Kathy said, get in the door first, right? Get the appointment, get in the door, conversation, and then start offering some options. There's financing options that might help out here. There's us kind of figuring something out for you that might help here. There's a leaseback option. We can put your house on the market and be very upfront. We'll look to lease this property back post-closing until we find a property suitable for us in a certain period of time, right? There would need to be parameters, obviously, right? But we just build those parameters in. There are sellers who would be okay finding that awesome house and not moving in until the summer because they now found an awesome house. And they were the ones who they to because they were willing to give them time, right? One of the ways that your buyer can help in terms of being chosen is being as flexible as possible, especially if we're bringing sellers to the table who are looking for that flexibility. Don't poo-poo the leaseback option. It's a very valid way to go to help your sellers buy time to find more opportunity.
Hey, Rick.
So yes, Amy.
So I just did a lease back just recently. I was representing the seller. And of course, like you said, they're in the driver's seat. So we knew that they needed extended time to find suitable housing. So we negotiated right up front with the buyer all of the terms of the lease back. So therefore, we didn't have any issues with, problems down the road. And we negotiated a 3-month lease back, but we did not end up needing the full 3 months. So in the end, everybody was delighted because obviously the buyers wanted to get into the house as quickly as possible. So we ended up just, instead of doing the 3-month lease back, we ended up doing an extended close with no lease back in the end, but it was highly effective.
Yeah, so thank you for putting that out there because I love the fact, I'm coming right to you, Tammy. I love that there's a perfect example. All the I's dotted, all the T's crossed on the leaseback, that didn't end up needing to be used. And both parties were happy about it. And then when it didn't need to be used, both parties were even more happy that it didn't need to be used. But what it accomplished was everyone being moving forward. And if I were each of you, I hope you listened to that story you just told. Because you have a colleague that had that thing happen to them, you now can use that story sitting with sellers to say, it was literally on a call with a colleague the other day who just said this is how she structured it, and they didn't end up needing the 3 months. Can you see how that kind of takes the pressure, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, to allow you the time that you need, knowing that we may not even. And because Amy actually just lived through that story, you have an opportunity to now use that as a real life example, right? It's one of the beauties of having these little masterminds when we share it. Thank you for putting that out there. Amy, go ahead.
So from a buyer's perspective, you technically do not have to take occupancy of the property for 60 days. So, and if you close in, let's say April, you close, your first mortgage payment is not due until June. My colleague just had a situation where they allowed the seller to stay in the house for an additional 45 days without charging them rent so that they could find suitable housing, because they knew that their mortgage payment wasn't going to be due. So they were able to work together. I'm not saying that works for everybody, but they allowed them to stay in the house for 45 days without charging them any money, because technically they didn't have to make a mortgage payment and the sellers were able to find suitable housing. So that just kind of goes with the 60 days is important on the mortgage side, but then also knowing that you're not going to have to you kind of skip a month of mortgage payments, knowing that your next payment's not due until June, kind of gives the buyer a little bit of breathing room, knowing that they're not paying for a house that they're not living in yet.
Yeah, great point, right? So we utilize some of these timeframes to our advantage. You have to start by knowing them and knowing how to use them strategically. So thank you for that. Paul, what else on bridging and whatnot?
Well, it's funny, you started off the conversation about leasebacks by saying, oh, everybody poo-poos it. And actually that's right. The old mindset was, oh, I don't want to do that. The new mindset is, this is a strategy that helps one side meet the other side. In other words, both sides end up getting what they want. So like Tammy was saying, the buyer doesn't have to make the payment till June. So now that helps get the seller to, give them the extra time to put their house on the market and sell. So again, the whole idea behind leaseback is to approach it as a new way of solving the issues at hand. When we have sellers that want to become buyers, but are afraid to jump into the pool, one of the things we say to them is start early. So for instance, you don't know where your down payment's coming from, and you may have to actually put a contract in on a house that just came on the market before you sell yours. So where does that down payment come from? And we say, if you start early enough and you can do a cash out refinance, for instance, on your own home, pull the cash out, put it in the bank, get it ready to go. Or for instance, you can pick up the phone and call your retirement, call Fidelity, call Merrill and say, what are the terms and conditions if I borrow from my own retirement account and repay it back? Whether I repay it back now or repay it back 6 months from now when I sell my house, or repay it next April, before April 15th. The whole idea though is you got to start early and understand that this is where you're headed. So if I'm a realtor and I've got someone who has to sell their home to get into a new home, you want to remind them to start early, call their financing people, call Tammy, call Paul, and get that paperwork going so that when it comes time, they've got the money.
Yeah, I love the idea that, I think the takeaway for me, from a financing perspective, after listening to both Tammy talk, is, you know what, engage them in these conversations. I would even say, and I hope I'm not speaking half, and yet I will, they would be happy to get on the phone or get on a Zoom call with sellers to figure out the best path forward, right? Talk about going the extra mile. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand a lot of those concerns. One of the things I'd like to do just to see if there's a funding solution to this concern, bring in one of our partners to have a conversation, so we get a three-way conversation around what your options are, right? Paul and Tammy are thrilled to be able to go and do that for you with yours, and because each seller is going to have a unique circumstance, right? So they'll need to hear the circumstance for the seller in order to give them options. It's not about generic options, it's specific options for a specific seller. Am I speaking out of school, guys, when I say that?
No, that's exactly
great.
right. The whole idea is to bring us in to help unstick the situation. One side's got a problem moving forward. If the reason is financial, that's what we're here for. We'll solve those problems and
Yeah.
help get it unstuck.
You know, in preparing, every time you guys are at family reunion or mega camp, I'll get text messages like, have you heard of this? Do you know this? So in kind of anticipation of this call, I did do some digging. I remembered a guideline way back where the biggest problem we always have when you're carrying two houses is the borrower usually cannot carry both mortgage payments. And Fannie Mae does have a guideline. It is risky. It requires cooperation. But if the people buying the house can waive their mortgage, have a clean commitment, contracts are signed, and we do not have to count the mortgage payment on the house that they're selling if they need to close on the house they're buying first. All the stars have to align, and if I'm the lender on that deal, I'm probably going to call Paul and be like, Paul, we're in this position. Where's your clear to close? What does your commitment letter look like? So it requires cooperation on all sides. But if the people are selling and their commitment is clean, we can close on the new house and not count the mortgage payment. Because that's really where we get stuck, because we can't buy the two houses. The borrower can't hold two mortgages. So there is an option for that I haven't seen it in a long time because nobody's willing to take that risk. But Fannie Mae does have a guideline. I confirmed it yesterday.
Yeah, nice. So here's the thing, guys, with the financing options, reach out, because again, one size will not fit all in this scenario. So if you have sellers looking for ways to move forward, I would get off this call and set them up with a call with our mortgage partners to see what the options might be based on their area, right? HELOCs might work. This might work. Stuff might work. We just have to know a little bit more about their scenario. There was some homeward conversation in the chat. Diane did get me information yesterday that I think Matt and Danielle confirmed that Texas, right, Georgia and Colorado are the only markets that Homeward is currently working in. We are looking at other more local solutions to what that could look like. Offers I don't think is functional in the state of Connecticut right now either. Just remember that those kinds of options are less great than they may sound, because usually part of the package of someone buying your house for cash so that you can go ahead and freely buy something else is that they then have to be able to resell it and make money. So they're not going to be one of your 90 centers paying $50,000 or 10% over the asking price. So just be aware that those programs, they're certainly out there. They may not be exactly what your seller is looking for. It may be, but it may not be, just because of how they work, right? They're not out for the good of mankind. They're out there to make money, right? And so they have to be able to buy at a number that they can reset and still meet their margin. So just remember that. The last thing, because we are out of time, the last thing I want to just throw seems kind of simple, but again, I think it's something that we should be aware of, and again, not judge hand. And that's the simple thing of adding into a contract for your seller that if they don't find suitable housing in a certain period of time, they're not bound to sell the house to the buyers, right? Giving them an out clause. And I'll tell you, when I said today, the chat box went all aflutter, really, come on, who would do that? Guys, think about it. If you have buyers who are living with their parents, and it doesn't matter if they say yes to a house and they push forward on it, part of that contractual arrangement could be that if the sellers decide not to sell in a month period of time, they reimburse the buyers for their inspection costs and everyone goes along their merry way, right? So build things. Everyone's so concerned about protecting their clients. And guys, I have to tell you that in a market that's moving this quickly, I'm not saying don't protect your clients. I'm saying loosen your grip, right? That's different than get a grip, just in case you were wondering. Loosen your grip on, I have to protect these people at all costs. And instead at it from the perspective of, here are your options. How would you to proceed, right? Because remember your job. Your job is to people and lay out all the options. Sometimes those options are risky. Do your clients have a right to make risky decisions? The answer, yes, of course they do, right? With informed consent, they have the right to do that. So lay out all of the options and don't prejudge it. A lot of the conversations I'm hearing come from a place of prejudging the things that, well, that can't work, that won't work, they won't like that. And you haven't even had a conversation with the seller yet about all the options, right? How do you don't know. So take all those notes that you took today. There were really interesting options to either find inventory or overcome some of the objections about inventory. Start going through them and making some phone calls and setting up some meetings to see how you can help people charge forward. I'm going to circle us back and close where Kathy started, because I think it's important to reiterate what Kathy said. Don't get stuck in the game of listing a property on the telephone, right? Instead, utilize statistics, excitement about the possibilities that are out there for them, and create an appointment so that you can then go and have the objection handling and the conversations around what this could look like in person or on Zoom. It's two separate conversations. Don't have the appointment on the telephone. Have the appointment face-to-face or Zoom by getting them excited. And here's the trick. The only way to get these clients excited about the possibilities is for you to get judgment of these possibilities aside and get excited yourself. When you're excited about their options, you will communicate those options in a far different way than if you think they all suck, right? So don't prejudge. Know that I think I took 10 different bullet points of notes about where to go and find inventory and how to put people together that I didn't have coming in here today. So I hope all of you got that. This will be posted on the YouTube channel. I'll make sure it's done by tonight so that you don't have to wait the whole weekend if you want to go back and re-listen to some of the ideas. But I would start charging forward. And my promise to you is that on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, we will have some version of a mini MLS inside of our organizations to present to you so that you can start working with each other to see who has what and if we can make some matches internally. All right, guys, as always, I hope this was massively helpful to you. So appreciate the masterminds that contribute. And I hope that you have ideas that you can go and implement right away. Have a lovely afternoon. Have a great weekend. Be safe, stay warm, and we'll see you at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Love you. See ya.